So, you mentioned Mr. Otis. What was it like, being in his band program, and what was he like as a teacher?
Um, he was literally one of the people as as a young person coming into marching band. It just seemed like he embodied what it meant to be a black teacher. You know, he stood by what he said. If you wanted to come and talk to him, you could, and he'll keep it real with you. He was either your dad or your grandpa, and he was not to be played with. But at the same time, he, for lack of a better term, just unbutton his collar, and just get to talking to us about any and everything. But when he was in front of the band, he was focused. He always made sure we tuned up. He always made sure we warmed up, and he always made sure the music was clean. Regardless of if we wanted to take it up or take it down, he was like, whatever you decide to do, make sure it's clean, make sure it's consistent. And he gave lessons in front of the band. Like he will explain to the trumpets how they're supposed to be buzzing their mouthpiece and how to practice. And we're all sitting there absorbing it. At least I was, and I started off on tenor saxophone. And I'm listening to him explain everything it is to be a trumpet player and like their position in the band as far as melody and harmony. He was like, the trumpets were the king of the band. So if you're gonna play the melody, you need to play strong. You need to play consistent. And he
Mm,
always say, we go practice on our own. He say, take it to the woodshed. Because he was from Mississippi.
mm.
So when he would practice when he was a little boy, he would literally go to a woodshed and practice. So it was like a cool visual. Whereas like every time I went to practice room, I'm like, yeah, I'm in a woodshed right now.
Mhm, mhm.
What I said? I'm getting it in. And he was really, really big on fundamentals. And his mission, he would tell us all the time. He said, whether or not you were going to be a musician, I'm going to teach you to be a musician, but I'm also going to teach you how to be a good citizen. And he was all about civility and responsibility and, not having a big ego. You know, I have a different philosophy on ego only because I wanted to change the rhetoric when it came to it. He was like, you don't want to have a big ego because then you feel like you're going to come to practice whenever you want to and you can have step in the performance and it's all right because you're that good. And, I always felt like if you really had that big of an ego and you thinking about the betterment of the band, it is because I'm that good is why I show up. You know what I'm saying? Because without me, y'all will fall apart. So I gotta be here. I
Mhm.
gotta play hard. Because if we're all a band, yeah, there are no individuals. But if it's nobody holding it down, I mean, well, what are we doing here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of things that he taught us about music was strictly coming from a place of, being a good person. Like if you can't sit down with your instrument and put in the time and the effort and really perfect your craft, how do you expect to go out in the real world and work a job?
Mm,
And how if you don't better yourself on your instrument, how do you expect to go out in the real world and demand better pay? If all the work you do is half done and you could never be found to do anything you're supposed to do, or when you're given a direct, task to do, you take forever to do it, you last minute, and you just bring the whole team down. So it's like everything he taught us as far as music and band, it was like directly transferable to anything else we got into. And I found it to be very true, especially getting into the workforce when I went to school in Ohio. After a while, I started working, I started cooking.
mm.
And the concepts of paying attention to your surroundings, knowing how far away you are from somebody, you know, um, making sure that the part of the order that's on your side is put out at the same time as the order on another station. It's all about paying attention and applying the stuff that you learn. And without the discipline that I learned in marching band, a lot of situations where I felt lost, I could just, pretty much get into my crab mode. Anybody that understand what crabbing is about is to absorb how it is to be in the band. So every time I approach a new situation, I get into my crab mode. I'm watching what everybody's doing. I'm copying them. I'm asking questions when appropriate. Because you can't ask somebody, in the kitchen, a detailed question in the middle of a lunch rush. There's tickets coming in back to back flying. So in those moments, you just have to try to pick up where you can. And when you're, beginning in the marching band, that's what you do as a freshman. You get taught during the times where you can get taught. And if you were in a band where, whether or not if you're a freshman, you perform, because that's what, that was our marching band. The moment you join the band, if we had a performance the next day, you suiting up and just follow along and fake it till you make it.
Hmm.
You know. So in regards to how he was as a band director, he focused on us as individuals through the music, which one of the things I learned later on down the line, he was feeding us Black Panther information, and we didn't even know it. Each one teach one.
Hmm.
I'm like, years down the line, I'm reading, I'm like, wow. Of course, it makes sense. He was a grown man doing, a lot of the movements that Black people had to go through as far as struggling. So everything he's teaching is from experience. So I'm like, each one teach one. That's a dope ass concept for real. Which means not only is he teaching us, we're teaching us at the same time.
Hmm.
So it's like, in essence, he's creating teachers. They're just something as simple as teaching somebody you recruited from your class how to, what's the finger positioning for C on saxophone, you know? And I think like he done it that way is because it's easier to teach someone because you know how to think, which is like, I don't know if that's what he was doing on purpose, but that's what I picked up. The more you get to know a person, the easier it is for you to teach them. So it's like, not only was I bred to be a musician, I was bred to be a teacher at the same time. Didn't even know it.
Wow. And was Mr. Otis a one man operation, or did he have a band staff?
He was definitely a one man operation. I didn't even know band directors were supposed to have staff that assist them until I got older and, started branching out and meeting some of my rivals. And
Wow.
it's because I didn't know that some band directors, the way they set up during the day, they have band classes, where as an administration at the time gave him general music classes, which was a double-edged sword because he would recruit out of those classes, like you join the band, easy A. You know what I'm saying? So the ones that had an interest in playing an instrument wanted easy A, which we all know playing an instrument, being in the band, and telling them it's an easy A was just a trick. There's nothing easy about marching band. You know what I'm saying? But the way he presented it and how enthusiastic he was about music, you can feel his passion when he was teaching how to play a different instrument. He went to some music conservatory that I probably been told 1,000 times which one it was, but he always just said the conservatory, where when he would explain how to play each individual instrument and how to play it in detail without even playing it himself. So it's like that kind of imagery he gave was it made it so much easier to transition between instruments. So if you play trumpet, in my spare time, since I know all my parts, I'm gonna just tinker around with the trumpet in one of the books so I can figure out which how this relates to my instrument. So when the next time you need help, I could just pick up a trumpet and play it along with you.
Wow. That's a hell of a legacy, man. And everybody knew about CVS, not just as a band, but as a school, probably
Yeah.
one of the largest campuses on the south side of Chicago,
Yeah.
in terms of high schools. What was it that distinguished CVS from other popular Chicago bands? Your Julians, your Dunbars, Corlises.
Um, to be honest, I was the head in the cloud type, so like a lot of the times when we went to go see anybody, like, as in the football game, I didn't have enough knowledge and understanding to realize what was happening. So as far as us being the bigger school, like one of the big schools in Chicago, um, when it came down to it, only thing that I had to reference after a certain point were like, the old school VHS tapes with the, HBCU bands on them.
Mm.
So it's like, because after a while, we stopped traveling too. So it's like, after what, 2002 is when the band really started to become a small band. But in reference to the question that you had before, as far as staff, the only thing we had back then were alumni that would go and march at these HBCUs and come back and bring their culture.
I
So,
see. I see.
so
Yeah.
we had a mixture of cultures. So like everybody at that time had a version of neck, right? But
Right.
it wouldn't be somebody's version. It'd be a mixture of everybody's version depending on the section. Like we like the baritones, we like the Pine Bluff version of neck, but the trumpets would probably play the Jackson version of neck. But because it was all in the same key, we figured out how to make it work. And our band director was so cool. He was like, as long as it sounds good, it doesn't matter. So, like a lot of different bands, the music that we had was passed down through the students because physical copies get lost.
Mm.
So, you know, with that, you pass down the parts that we end up creating. That's not even in music, but because we understand little bits and pieces of how chord structures work, that gets passed down. And then, we have some alumni that come back that try to teach us, you know, some musical fundamentals when it comes to being in the band and, the culture and technique on your instrument. And they listen to the song and they're like, that's not in the music. And we're like, what music?
Yeah.
It was all taught by ear. I mean, not to say that there wasn't music, but it's like some of the older songs like PYT that we used to play, we stopped playing it because a lot of the people that knew it either graduated or just wasn't in the band. And when you learn the new songs, a lot of the songs that we used to play get put on the back burner. So, after so long you don't call it, who's going to be there to remember?